The Chicago White Sox were rained out on Wednesday afternoon. Even Arizona falls victim to the possibility of inclement weather in the spring. White Sox bullpen is a bit depleted right now and has a few question marks heading into these last few weeks of camp. But White Sox relievers will need to play a big role early on. There are some new concession deals going on at the ballpark this season on Tuesdays, and something is happening near Lot B.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sox. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong, die-hard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, welcome back to Locked On White Sox. 2 weeks away from opening day, our Chicago White Sox head to Houston to kick things off a 4-game series. Appreciate you continuing to pass this podcast along to other White Sox fans in your life, and get those questions and comments in for next week's Wednesday mailbag, lockedonsox@gmail.com. Spring training record for our Chicago White Sox, 8-6 with a tie. Sox were, of course, rained out on Wednesday afternoon. Update you on some of the World Baseball Classic action if you've been following it. Exciting stuff. I think it's an exciting brand of baseball, and whatever gets people excited about baseball, I'm all for it. Yoan Moncada for Team Cuba, as of this recording, in 5 games, 8 for 19, slashing .421, 522, 737, 4 walks, 3 strikeouts, a home run, and 5 RBIs. He started off slow, but he has come on fast for Team Cuba when they have needed him. Eloy Jimenez, 4 for 7 in his, it's just a small sample size with a couple RBIs, but good to see him swinging the bat and staying healthy as he plays outfield. Luis Robert, not so much in 5 games, 5 for 22. He has 4 RBIs, but 7 strikeouts. Hey, let's follow up on Dylan Cease's outing from Tuesday against the Oakland Athletics. Remember, this was his first outing after that extremely rough outing against the Kansas City Royals, where he gave up 11 runs and less than an inning's work, really. The 2022 AL Cy Young runner-up responded to that blunder against the Royals by allowing 3 hits and 2 runs, only 1 earned over 3 1/3 innings, striking out 4 in his longest start of the spring so far. This is what Dylan Cease had to say. I needed to get back on the mound. Anytime you get beat down pretty good, I think the best thing is just to get back up there and keep going until you have some success. I threw curveballs and sliders really well for strikes. I started off a little slow, but I feel like I got my rhythm. It's definitely a positive step in the right direction. When I'm locked and ready to go, which I feel like I am, I think these last couple starts before opening day are going to be really sharp, Dylan Cease said. Good enough for me. Again, I listened to that game on the MLB app, and you could tell the announcers were commenting on how shaky Cease was in that first inning, and they were well aware of what happened against the Royals again, but he said, look, sometimes you got to get punched in the mouth, to kind of come down to earth and tighten some things up. And I think Ethan Katz is right there with him of it matters. Let's clean it up right now because the clock is ticking here. This is what manager Pedro Grfiol had to say. He is not worried, by the way. One start is not going to affect Dylan. Spring training started. He's working on some things. He was just doing a little bit of what he does. So good stuff there. Again, Dylan Cease healthy, which is what we all are just hoping for as we're counting down until that opening day. So Sox and Giants rained out Wednesday afternoon. Probably a welcomed day off. This past Monday was their last scheduled day off. It's been a busy spring. They have had a lot of games going on since they started things up on February 25th. I bet it was kind of nice just to have an extra day thrown in there with, these 2 weeks left, a lot going on. Some might say the dog days of spring training. Lucas Giolito will throw 4 innings in a B game on Thursday. Nick Avila will be an opener in the Cactus League matchup ahead of Jesse Schultens. Again, Nick Avila was that Rule 5 draft pick this past offseason. And Rick Hahn said, look, I'm only going to take somebody in the Rule 5 draft if I think they can help in 2023. And maybe he might find his way into the bullpen. Bullpen for the White Sox is a big question mark right now, in my opinion. I think it's something that is understandably depleted when you look at it on the surface. Some of the names that we've got, Crochet and Hendriks, are noticeably and understandably absent right now. So I go back to Scott Merkin's article on WhiteSox.com earlier this past month, March 4th, when he was going through just some players that he thought, have the best chance of making the roster. And he's got 8 guys out of the bullpen. So 5 starters, 8 bullpen arms. And he had Kendall Graveman, Ronaldo Lopez. Both of those obviously make sense. Aaron Bummer, which we'll get to in a moment. Joe Kelly, Jimmy Lambert, Jake Diekman, Jose Ruiz, Nick Avila. So 6 right-handed pitchers, 2 left-handed pitchers. Others that are on the fringe, you got Tanner Banks, who came up big in certain situations last season. Matt Foster, Gregory Santos, and Frank German, both of those 2 picked up just in acquisitions this past off season. So Bummer expects to be ready for the season opener, Merkin wrote, despite telling MLB.com he took a step back at the start of spring training due to nagging soreness in his left shoulder lat area. He feels good presently. Again, this was early March. So there was a very recent article in the Chicago Sun-Times by Mark Gonzalez highlighting Aaron Bummer. And Gonzalez wrote, in a best case scenario, left-handed reliever Aaron Bummer will be ready for the start of the regular season with no time to spare. That was the forecast Bummer disclosed Sunday after throwing 35 pitches in his second bullpen session. I've had enough run-ins with the training staff on building schedules that I trust them to put me in a position to succeed, and we'll see where we're at 7 to 10 days from now and 7 to 10 days after that. With the March 30th season opener approaching, Bummer is playing catch-up after experiencing a lingering discomfort in the left shoulder lat area that limited him to 26% innings last season. Bummer doesn't know when he will pitch in a regularly scheduled game. I'm just getting through bullpens, and we move from bullpens to simulated games, then simulated games into real games, Bummer said, who limited left-handed hitters to a .256 slugging percentage in 2022. I know that I'm not a starter that needs 2 to 3 innings or anything like that, Bummer said. So again, Monday it was the last scheduled day off before the Sox will be departing for Houston following their spring finale against the Cubs on March 28th. And according to Gonzalez in that Sun-Times article, manager Pedro Grfiol plans to start playing his starters and reserves with more regularity. That includes second baseman Romy Gonzalez, who hasn't played since Wednesday that's last Wednesday, because of what Grfiol described as body soreness. Nothing alarming, Grfiol said. And again, Gonzalez hitting under 100 in spring training. Not that it maybe matters a ton, but, are you going to break camp with somebody that's got some injuries? Romy Gonzalez was supposed to be a guy that was definitely going to compete, if not win, the second base job. This was, of course, before Elvis Andrus came into the fold. The pitch clock can definitely help pitchers get into a rhythm this coming season, but it might also disrupt a pitcher's stamina. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on anything from the money line to point scorers and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked-on. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. A really interesting article in The Athletic by James Fegan recently. White Sox pitching coach Ethan Katz on bullpen use, hidden impact of pitch clock. So, we talked about, and I'm sure you're talking about it with other Sox fans in your life, the pitch clock can help guys get into a rhythm and get them out of their heads, specifically guys like Lucas Giolito, maybe Michael Kopech and Dylan Cease. But this Athletic article spoke on the flip side of the pitch clock, how it may present a problem. Fegan wrote, a lot of speculation on the effects of the pitch clock has centered around a decline in velocity for max effort pitchers who no longer have as much time to recover and load up. But White Sox pitching coach Ethan Katz is more specifically worried about starters who no longer have the space to take a breather amid a long inning, pitching through points of fatigue. I think it's real, Katz said. I think it's unknown right now, but I think it's real. I think starting pitchers are more susceptible to get hurt than ever before, Katz said, because they have a long inning and you're trying to push them through. They can be susceptible if they have a 20-pitch inning, 25-pitch inning, and a 20-pitch inning. They don't really get a chance to catch their breath. That's where my job and the catcher's job are trying to help them find moments, to find time. There's stuff we've talked about that I will not say to kind of make these things happen a little bit easier. But it's something that's going to be a lot different that we're going to have to adjust and really pay attention to, because in decision-making, if a guy has 2 or 3 hard innings, it might be a factor in him going 6 innings instead of 7. So are we thinking still closer by committee? This is what Pedro Grfiol said. We're not going to have, this is our 9th inning guy. We're definitely looking for the best matchup, Katz said, because the best matchup might be in the 8th inning and do not have time to wait until the 9th inning. Get 3 outs in the 8th inning and figure out the 9th later, because it might push the order down. We might like taking our chance with somebody else and put a little bit more leverage in the guy that we think can do the job in the 8th. However, it presents itself, and also recognizing who's on the bench on the other side and what moves they might be making. There's a lot of smart people in that dugout that I trust, Grfiol said, talking about input from his staff on high leverage reliever use. When we make decisions, I want them to have a lot of suggestions and throw them my way. Obviously, I have to make the decision, and I've got to live with the decision that I make, but we're all in this thing together. How refreshing is that? The team of rivals mentality. Grfiol, very humble. I mean, he gets it. Like everybody, I'm looking for all the ideas, and that is going to have to be a snap decision. And I think those decisions will get a little bit easier, as the season rolls on and Grfiol has a better understanding, and even Katz of who can play in different spots. And sometimes you might want to go with the hot hand, especially, if they can do it, if they're feeling healthy and they're ready to go, maybe back-to-back games or 3 games in a row. But I love that he's willing, hey, let's all bring some input in. Maybe you're seeing something that I haven't been seeing, and let's put our heads together here. Look, I think the bullpen is going to be so important early on as starting pitchers look to get their legs, and adjustments are still made with regards, to the pitch clock. I thought those were some great points by Ethan Katz in that Athletic article by James Fegan. It's like, yeah, the pitch clock can help speed some pitchers up, get them out of their head, get them in a rhythm. But, some of these guys that are max effort, they got to catch their breath. We don't want to force them into a situation where they're pulling a muscle or they're getting out of their, their repeatable motion because there isn't as much time as they're used to. That's something I'm assuming they're working on right now, but I think it's still going to go on in April and May. Winning, on the margins is going to be critical. Something that did not happen for the White Sox last season, especially in April and May. And if our starters, they don't have their legs quite yet, which is the case for all of Major League Baseball, the Sox are absolutely going to have to rely on right now a questionable bullpen. Hopefully it galvanizes in the next 2 weeks, but the bullpen is going to be essential. Comparisons being made, talking about winning on the margins here, comparisons being made to Elvis Andrus and Tadahito Iguchi. According to Kenny Williams, Iguchi was the missing piece in 2005. Could Elvis Andrus provide that spirit in 2023? Scott Merkin had an interesting write-up on WhiteSox.com. Merkin wrote, Andrus seems to fit perfectly into Pedro Grfiol's aggressive managerial style and is an exceptional clubhouse presence. But of course, time will tell if this new second baseman has the same championship closing effect 18 years later. I know we're still talking about 2005, and we should be talking about 2005. Hopefully, we've got a new team, new year to talk about very soon. But wow, what Scott Podsednik and Tadahito Iguchi did 1-2 in that lineup day after day, it was clockwork. Podsednik would get on, maybe steal a bag, so he'd be on second before you know it. And then Tadahito Iguchi, who could hit for power, he knew his role, and it was get Podsednik over, hitting to the right side, played some great second base. So that's high praise for Elvis Andrus. If he's hitting in that 9th spot, second leadoff guy, and turning the lineup over, I'd like to see that. Obviously, high praise for Elvis Andrus all throughout the clubhouse, and I think the Sox definitely got better bringing him back last month. He most likely was on Grfiol's wish list. We talk about those, those guys this past off season. What type of game does Pedro Grfiol want to play? How does he see a lineup? And maybe he was really in Rick Hahn's ear of like, look, I see value in Elvis Andrus. I want this guy on my team. He's going to help me play the type of game I want to play. There will be some new deals on food and drink this season on Tuesdays at the ballpark, and some interesting developments on improvements outside of Gate 5. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Baseball GM. Hey, I'm really excited about our new partner and sponsor of today's episode, the mobile game Ultimate Baseball GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an MLB GM and managing your professional baseball franchise? Well, your dream could come true, and this game is definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your play through the season, and lead your team to glory. You are responsible for hiring the right coaches and staff, scouting and drafting players, navigating your franchise through free agency and all the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. Now, folks, is your chance to prove that you can be more competent than our GM, Rick Hahn. No guarantee that you'll have as much job security as him, but it'll be fun to have a seat at the table over and over again. Hopefully you set the market and be proactive instead of reactive. Locked On White Sox listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com. Scan the code or look it up in the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, I don't know if you saw this. White Sox released it on social media. I don't know if I came across it on the website quite yet. I saw it on their Twitter feed. There's some new stadium concession prices on Tuesdays. Now, way back when, maybe 20 years ago or so, if not more, they used to have these types of deals like I think it was Pepsi Monday. It might even switch to Pepsi Tuesday, where you would bring literally an empty bottle of Pepsi or a can of Pepsi, and you'd get deals on tickets that you would buy at the ticket booth. All of that stuff is completely non-existent pretty much anymore. Everything's on the app, but this is an interesting move here. So on Tuesdays this season, you're going to have $5 Miller Lite Modelo 16-ounce drafts. That left field area that gets kind of rowdy on Friday and Saturdays. I think Tuesdays it's going to be crazy out there in the outfield. So you got $5 Vienna beef hot dog or Polish sausages, $5 Garrett popcorn, $5 Coca-Cola products. Nachos are $5 on Tuesdays, and a slice of Beggar's Pizza, $5. Not bad. Again, still overpaying for all of those things, but compared to where beer sales and other items are at, $5 on Tuesdays, not bad at all. So look for that this season. And there's also a ton of changes around the ballpark, especially Lot B near Gate 5. So that is where you would enter perhaps the Chi Sox Bar and Grill, the souvenir shop, the depot is over there. I've talked about it on this podcast. Tons of construction, and this stuff happened like days after the season ended. They're putting in all these bollards for security purposes, I guess. But I had heard a rumor that perhaps the original Comiskey Park home plate that's still there, of course, might be getting a bit of a moment, maybe, I don't know, a bit of a brick wall or some plaque or some sort of distinction, a protection perhaps. So folks will never be able to drive over it. And it looks like that could be happening. There's a white tent right now. When you walk by Lot B, there's a white tent kind of over where the old home plate would be. Almost like if they're, building something and wanting to keep it kind of secret. There's also a bunch of green AstroTurf that's being installed by that walkway that you would kind of enter off of Shields, and you'd be walking east towards the Chi Sox Bar and Grill and towards the Sports Depot. Lots of green AstroTurf over there. Definitely have a different look. Tons of work that still needs to be done with less than 3 weeks to go until the home opener. So I'm sure that's going to ramp up soon. But, I walked over there the other day and I was pretty surprised. Green AstroTurf in there. So I do hope that old Comiskey Park home plate does have a moment. We'll see. Speaking of old Comiskey Park, Last Comiskey Part 3, Thursday night, 8 p.m., March 16th. I have really enjoyed parts 1 and 2. I've watched them a few times. Cannot wait for this finale, part 3. From what I remember talking to producer, writer, Matt Flesh. I think this is going to focus a little bit on the bullpen, so not timely with everything that's going on with our current bullpen this coming season. So check that out. Last Comiskey Part 3 should drop on YouTube at 8 p.m. Thursday, March 16th, of course. Hey, folks, thank you so very much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcast. We're on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTV. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and get your questions in for next week's mailbag, lockedonsox@gmail.com. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy baseball strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, on the next episode, I'll continue to bring you the latest happenings from Glendale, Arizona, as the White Sox inch closer to opening day. Really appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski. Until next time, go Sox.